There you go. I think we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to Gregory, a frozen Gregory today. We see maybe the camera can unfreeze during the stream, hopefully. But yeah, Cryptocito 3 today. This is the third time you're on my channel, and it's always great. There's actually a couple of things like that you said, you know, like you helped me a lot in the beginning when I started to learn about Cosmos, to understand the ecosystem, to also understand the philosophy. And there's actually two things I want to start with that. There's actually two things that still resonate with me until today, which is the first one, that phrase you said, out collaborating the competition. I think that's really the spirit of Cosmos. And the second thing you said was more related to the Cosmos Hub, which is the Cosmos Hub as a voluntary shelling point in the Cosmos ecosystem. So like, I don't know, those two things, whenever I think about, you know, collaboration or the Cosmos Hub, like those are the first things that come to my mind. And you were the one that like shared that with me. And, you know, I think it's on spot, that philosophy. But yeah, excited to see what big learning I have today from you. It's always a pleasure. But first of all, Gregory, thank you so much for being here. Maybe you can start a little bit sharing your past couple months, maybe also a little bit about 2022. That has obviously been a horrible year in crypto. So yeah, how did you experience that? How is everything going?
Yeah, wow. So yeah, 2022 certainly it was a roller coaster. And yeah, pretty intense, but we're still here. We're still cracking. So, you know, I do have to say the FTX stuff kind of really took the wind out of my sails. I was pretty pissed off. Now, I always knew that SBF and FTX were shady. I don't see how anybody could have missed that personally. Not through just like, I don't know, spidey sense or whatever. You start to get a sense of like who's a good actor in the space and who is just kind of like on the take. And so we didn't have any, and I think Cosmos ecosystem was, you know, underexposed and didn't have a lot. You know, it's not like Solana where it was so enmeshed with the very being of that network and that community that it really crashed things. So obviously from that perspective, we were all insulated and lucky. But I think just emotionally, boy, what a bummer to have that happen, especially at Regen Network. We are really about cooperation and public goods and the open source element of this, and, you know, kind of this holding this vision of how we can together, we can create this new regenerative economy. And to have the whole kind of the black eye on the whole blockchain and crypto space, that, you know, it just felt like we got punched and, you know, sucker punched kind of, because, you know, you just get this one person. It has nothing to do with the technology. You know, if anything, we're all aiming, those of us who are creators in the space, we're aiming to create these new, transparent, community-owned, disintermediated, efficient, corruption-proof markets and mechanisms. And you get one dude with a few offshore companies, and, you know, he could have been selling tulips or anything. It doesn't have anything to do with the crypto part of it. It's just that people were hyped about this thing, and, you know, dude man committed fraud, and all of the rest of us have to pay with the, you know, sort of our reputation and the opportunity, you know, people. So it feels different. 2023 feels different. Like really, there's a significant shift in sentiment, I have to say. And, you know, obviously there's still a very strong core of people, and there's still so much innovation. And so I'm a pretty big believer that we still have the momentum that we need to get through this. But I have to say that was a pretty big, that was a big impact. And yeah, it sucked.
Yeah. It's funny how the new year flipped and like immediately the sentiment changed. Like I felt like it was just totally different. Like everybody came back from their Christmas holidays and New Year's, and like we just had this little relief rally. I don't want to say like we're in a bull run and everything is positive again and we washed out the bad actors. Like there could still be another wave of kind of like, bad actors being washed out. But if I feel like there's, it was the first couple of weeks, especially, where like there's still hope, right? And they're still active. We're still not dead. Bitcoin is still not dead. Like the space is still growing, right? But it was definitely very disappointing what happened. And 2022, just like, I mean, FTX was just one big thing, right? But also the whole Terra.
I mean, I'm just like, just recency bias. That stuff just happened. But yeah, it was a roller coaster, I mean, and obviously Terra's collapse had so much more impact on the Cosmos ecosystem. I mean, yeah.
But then also we had some light in between, right? I also, just in preparation for that, rewatched your presentation at Cosmoverse. Was that your first time in Medellin, actually?
Yeah. That was my first time in Medellin. I've spent a lot of time in Latin America, but that was my first time in Medellin. It was beautiful. That was really an amazing event. I had people coming who had attended, but weren't really Cosmos ecosystem folks, coming up to me and just being like, wow, there is something happening here. This feels amazing to have such a community gathering. And gosh, they unveiled Atom 2, and then we had all the Atom drama. I have to say that also, kind of took the wind out of my sails to see the way that the politics ended up happening. I feel you and the audience are catching me at an all-time low of I'm pretty disenchanted, I would say. I'm feeling quite disgruntled and grumpy about the Cosmos ecosystem and really the crypto space more broadly. So I'll try to be. I always try to, like, especially in public spaces, people will notice. Like I try to be honest, but also thoughtful about how I communicate about hard things. Like I'm not a hot take, like drive attention kind of actor. That's not how I like to show up, and so I'm not going to do that. But I do have some spicy opinions.
No, I mean, I think that's totally fair. And I also had a stream with Jack Zempolin like last week. After we paused it for like 2 months or something, and he was also like a little bit, obviously he was very close and deeply involved with Atom 2.0, and there was a lot of politics, as you mentioned. So he got a lot of headwind for that, and even like personal attacks, which is complete bullshit. And especially as soon as things get personal, like that's far beyond the line, obviously. But I'm just curious, like what made you grumpy, as you say? Is it just the sentiment? Is it politics, or why do you feel grumpy about Cosmos?
Well,
real talk.
Real talk. I mean, well, so it has everything to do with Regen's relationship and position and sort of so we're OGs in the space in a lot of ways. Regen Network Development has been a core maintainer of the Cosmos SDK. In fact, I think if you dig a little, you'll see tweets from Dave and others in the ecosystem from Osmosis saying like, oh, Regen saved Cosmos. Like literally everything would have collapsed if our team hadn't stepped up and like taken things and moved with them. And that had costs to us. We did it out of the belief in the ecosystem and the desire to see things happen. And I think I am sorry to say that our maintainership and our relationship with the ICF is coming to an end here in April or so. And I feel pretty grumpy about how that's all gone down. And I don't want to air dirty laundry, so to speak, but I am I've been for a long time. I've been someone who's, I guess, always given the benefit of the doubt to the Interchain Foundation. And at this stage, I'm pretty disappointed in their role as an institution in the space. I'm also disappointed with how other people are showing up as well. There's an interesting dynamic in which, I see things as, especially with like just thinking of Interchain Foundation for a second, enormously talented, well-meaning people. Like, I don't think there's some corruption or some, malevolence, right? But the end result of things is it's disordered. They're not doing good transparency, and there's a lot of unhappy people. Like, and now I've become, and our Regen has become unhappy. There's just like just like this halo of unhappy people, and it feels like even the people on the inside of Interchain Foundation are unhappy with how things are going. And I don't know what we need to do as an ecosystem to support the Interchain Foundation taking the steps it needs to sort of clean its house up and engage proactively in the way that I believe that the ecosystem needs from them. But I certainly I think there needs to be some change. I don't feel a lot of motivation to help anymore based on my recent engagement. I'm just feeling like, yeah.
No, that's totally fair. And I think 2 weeks ago, Confio also came out and said, like, guys, we can't sustain like that. And we also just need to, funding to survive. And also, I think it's not just like it's obviously also about the funding, but also just that recognition, I think, is super important. So, but like, let me ask you that, because I also got this question on my Twitter when I announced the interview. What's been your collaboration with the ICF? You guys are OGs in the space, in Cosmos. So what has that relation been like over the years? And also, one question for me personally, who is actually running the ICF?
Well, I may not be the right person to answer that. I was just asking somebody yesterday to tell me who's actually running things. But I'll start with so our relationship with the ICF started. We started contributing code to the Cosmos SDK as soon as we decided to use it, and that was back in early 2018, maybe. And over time, we contributed before we were ever paid. We were just sort of like cleaning things up, contributing, asking for what we need, sort of engaging. And we were, by the time that the institutional implosion happened, in which All in Bits exploded, and Interchain Foundation, there was a lot of institutional drama, and there was a lot of like, how are we going to figure things out? Regen R&D, I think, was the most, we were doing the most committing to the core code base of the Cosmos SDK of any team, up to and including AIB, which had the bulk of the engineers at that time. Or at least we were on par with them, right? We were sort of like right there in the middle of like engaging with things. We had done some one-off service contracts at that point. So there had been some specific things where the ICF had been like, oh, hey, we'd been communicating, and they'd be like, oh, if you do this, great. And we did these little chunks of work, right? And then when things imploded, we were there, and we were asked, would you guys be able to take over maintaining the Cosmos SDK? Because politically, there's this fight between Interchain Foundation and AIB, and we were sort of a neutral party that had already been contributing and been sort of engaging in a good way and in a responsible way. And so we basically took over maintainership and saw the SDK both through that transition, through the launch of IBC, through the Stargate update and all of that work, and then until just we'll be sunsetting that contract and sort of rearranging our relationship here shortly. So it's been a long haul, and it's funny because I see on Twitter I've been seeing an increasing rate of people on Twitter saying Cosmos SDK is the best software ever, and like everybody's coming to Cosmos and it's because of the SDK and all these things. And like there's just this unsung hero, which is Aaron Krelius and and his engineering team at Regen, which has made that all true, right? He also invented CosmWasm. People forget this, right? He's just been, and he's an introverted guy. He's not interested in the politics of things, but he's just done this huge amount of work to try to do not sexy. It's not sexy to dig in and refactor the SDK and make it usable, because at the time we took it over, it was really, upgrades were impossible. I mean, there were so many things that made it very hard to build a Cosmos chain, and now it's getting better and better. And I think we had hoped to even make it better at a quicker pace than it even is, for sure. But it's a significantly improved piece of software. So we picked it up. I think we left it better than we found it, significantly. And our relationship with the Interchain Foundation, I think, has been mutually beneficial. Like I'm grateful for the contractual relationship. I have so much respect for many of the people who flowed through the Interchain Foundation. And as I said, like genuinely, everybody who's on the council, everybody who's on the tab, the technical advisory board, all of the people, I think are competent and well-meaning. But something about how the conditions are making, there's some sort of like dysfunction taking place. And it seems like everybody says that. Like, I don't talk to somebody who's like, no, we're doing it perfect. Like everybody's like, yeah, this is not quite working right. And, ultimately I have quite a bit of compassion about that, because it's hard building new institutions and playing a neutral role and engaging in the way that needs to be engaged is not easy. And there's not like, it's also not easy to hire people who are responsible and talented and want to play such a political role either. Like, you couldn't pay me to be the executive director of the Interchain Foundation. You couldn't. Like, and I think most sane people, it's just the amount of, at this stage, the amount of drama and flack. I mean, I think people are maybe running the other direction as fast as they can. I don't know. So while being frustrated with the people, with the Interchain Foundation as an institution right now in this moment, I'm frustrated. I also have a fair amount of just like, yeah, but it's a hard and shitty job. So I don't know.
Fair enough. No, I understand your point. I see that frustration also from other teams. As I said, I talked to Jack. I think Jacob Gedikin is also quite frustrated, and so are many other independent development teams. So I think, like, because I digged a little bit deeper recently into, Avalanche, Cardano, Polkadot, like how do they operate? And they all just have this star founder, and they have a big organization that runs everything, that runs their marketing, that runs the development of the SDKs, of marketing, BD, right? It's all like from that organization. But also the decision making is quite centralized, right? And I think in Cosmos, you have this situation that you don't have such an organization that just decides on everything, which is kind of good because the community can contribute a lot, right? And like what we've been doing with Cosmoverse, like this would never be possible on Cardano, right? Or in Polkadot, right? Like it's like Parity, IOHK, like these big companies are running all that.
Yeah.
But
it's the only ecosystem that it's possible. Really, it is the only one. Like if you think Solana, the foundation runs Breakpoint or the events, and IOHK and Web3 Foundation, everybody's really like curating and managing the full process. So but I think there needs to be a balance, right? Mm-hmm. I think there needs to be a balance in which the institutional responsibilities of the Interchain Foundation and other founding organizations, because also Interchain, we all look to Interchain and have expectations, but also we need, other founding organizations with networks that are live and are using the technology really need to contribute back in an organized way as well. And so there was this idea of the Builders Foundation, which I think is good, but who's leading it? Everybody's busy. There's like all of these, the coordination, the friction around coordinating and funding the public goods and honoring development work and giving, attribution and honoring contribution and aligning incentives. I really love what evmos has been trying to do to sort of like realign incentives with developers, right? And that's cool. They're trying to do it from a token economic perspective. I had high hopes around the Builders Foundation and sort of, and I think different leaders, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how this all really shakes loose, but I think it just hasn't gotten wind in its sails because, some of the people who were involved in that ended up getting asked to be on the technical advisory board for ICF. So, all the energy goes there. And yeah, I mean, on one level, I'd love to roll my sleeves up and help. On another level, I guess this is where I feel jaded and exhausted, is just like, I feel like we've been going above and beyond for years to try to be a proactive model citizen of the Cosmos ecosystem. And I look around and I don't see that many other organizations taking that level of leadership that we've taken. And at this stage, it's sort of, I almost feel punished for it. At this point, I'm just like, what are, and that's obviously I'm sort of sharing my emotions and, I'm being transparent about that and authentic about that. I also, again, in public discourse, speaking of things that I'm grumpy about, I am super grumpy around the way that people behave with Cosmos Hub governance and the governance of other things. And I get it. There's money at stake. And I get it. Like theater sells and these political stunts sell, and being a troll on the internet doesn't cost you anything. And you might build a followership and you might be able to manipulate the results and get some money. But that kind of behavior drives away people like me. Like, I am not going to spend time in a public arena in which people don't have a certain level of decorum. Like, it's just not going to happen. I'm not willing to put my time and effort and money and resources into online, just complete nonsense.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I mean, we've also been in, not to that degree, obviously, but also, when we went through on-chain governance for Cosmos, which is, I think, in my opinion, that's like an amazing thing to do, right? To fund a conference through on-chain governance. Like, how cool is that, right? Like, you're actually using decentralized technologies for something that's in the real world. And then there's just a few people. Like, I think also, like, it's the vast minority, but it's a very noisy minority.
It's a noisy minority, and it takes an impact. I guess maybe you just have to be thicker skinned. But I just think about it. I'm like, the things that I would like to see happen on the hub, just to be frank, I'm just being super frank. And I also want to talk about Regen network stuff and, like some of the big things happening. But, just super frankly, I don't want, like, I have a lot of ideas and thoughts over the years and have thought about different things. We thought about doing Cosmos Zero on the hub, and we basically decided not to because of our experience with Juno, but primarily, which.
Can you talk maybe first of all, clarify what Cosmos Zero is? That's one of the things I wanted to talk to.
So Cosmos Zero is a campaign that's the process around which has been taking place for a while. We did a lot of foundational work in which we built a methodology to measure the carbon emissions of Cosmos blockchains and other proof of stake blockchains. And we created a process to go through at a protocol level through community governance and offset the blockchain so that they're completely carbon neutral. And then over time, we can automate more and more of that. And this creates a really interesting economic dynamic where there's a commodity, like a real world commodity, which is a carbon credit, being used by a blockchain. There's all sorts of amazing financial opportunities that emerge out of having that kind of flow through, where it's not just, arbitrary or magic internet money. These are like real world assets that have outside of the blockchain trading value, right? Being incorporated into and exchanged and being utilized by our economy to offset our blockchains. And, different people, at some point I'll go on Don Kryptonium's, who I think is a big skeptic around carbon markets, and other people, so there are people who are like, oh, carbon markets, those are just sort of like woke, politically correct things. It's like, folks, there's a like $500 billion carbon market, right? This is not just like some random hippie idea that's out there. There's a concrete economic understanding that climate change costs businesses money. And in order to reduce that cost, you can create a market mechanism, which is like the most libertarian free market ideology thing in the world, to create a market mechanism to fund the public goods of reducing carbon emissions and sequestering carbon into systems to balance our atmosphere, right? So, and it's basically like, this is a ship who's already sailed. So if people want to be like, oh, carbon credits are nonsense or whatever, it's like, sorry, but you're on the wrong side of history. Like, this stuff is already happening. It's going to continue to happen. It's going to be huge because it needs to be huge. Okay, Regen Network is a blockchain built for carbon registry and carbon markets. So we create high quality, transparent, we create the tools for people to mint carbon credits that are, of enormously high value. And we're using those carbon credits to offset blockchains, like I was mentioning, Cosmos Zero. So we can offset blockchains. And so Stargaze and Checked and Osmosis, and who else? Evmos is in governance right now, and I think will pass, and it seems super exciting. Regen Network has offset itself. IXO offset itself back in the day. So, and what that does is it makes us more competitive, right? Because in the marketplace of ideas and in the marketplace of the world, consumers do care about carbon footprint of blockchains. And one of the biggest restraints is like, wait, isn't that, even if it's a little bit of a misunderstanding, they're like, wait, isn't blockchain bad for the environment? If you can basically say like, no, not only is this energy efficient, but also it's carbon negative. We've offset all of our carbon as a protocol. The cost of doing it is pretty minimal, right? We can talk into some of the headwinds that we got into because of market conditions. Like some communities like Akash were like, yeah, this is awesome, except for our treasury is at an all-time low, so we don't want to do it right now. Okay, totally understandable. There's probably other ways to think about things. But I don't have a lot of sympathy for the like, oh, all carbon credits are meaningless and this is just some sort of like, woke elite ESG scam. Like people say that stuff and I just like facepalm. I'm just like, literally, I don't know what QAnon rabbit hole those people just.
Yeah, I think also what you mentioned earlier, some of the criticism, I think we're just now in a time where people love to label others, right? And like put a stamp on it, like, okay, you're part of this agenda and you have a secret agenda that you want to pursue and all these kind of things. And like, not really, like maybe you're just an expert in a field and you know your shit, right? But I feel like we're just in a time where like people like to finger point at each other and like put labels and build these communities that are like against each other. Like I don't really get it. I also think like we're in a time, especially on crypto Twitter or even Cosmos Twitter, where like being a troll is considered something very fun and entertaining. but it's kind of like crossing the line many times, not just sometimes, but many times, which could also potentially be the side effect of this prolonged bear market, what we talked initially, right? A lot of people probably just lost all their money in FTX or in Terra and Luna, right? So it could also just be a side effect of that.
Yeah, people are
general
grumpy,
market.
and I sympathize. I'm feeling
Yeah.
grumpy too. but you know, I think it's important. I mean, I'm just a big, like, number one, like, as we were getting back to this sort of like core premises, right? The core premise of Cosmos is, you know, out cooperate. This is my version of it, but out cooperate the competition. And the Cosmos Hub is a voluntary shelling point.
Yeah.
If we're going to succeed as an ecosystem, cooperation requires coordination, it requires decorum, it requires transparency, it requires authentic, honest communication between counterparties. You cannot coordinate if everybody's just flaming and trolling and playing backroom power politics. It can't happen. So if we're in a competition right now and we feel like we want to build our ability as an ecosystem to influence the world, to have a good market cap, to have good outcomes, whatever our motivations might be, we have to manage ourselves as individuals, and we have to police each other to just like remind each other, you know, like, let's uplift the conversation. You can call people out, right? You can speak truth to power in a way that is also respectful and increases the likelihood that it is heard, right? Like, we don't need to be creating, you know, the recreating everything that's bad about the way that governance takes place in the spectacle that is our current governmental institutions. We can build and innovate tools, and we need to understand that there's also a culture. Like, how do we approach decision making? How do we approach, like, you've always done such an amazing job of learning in public and being publicly curious. That's culture. That's like the way that we do things. And that's leadership. That shows people, you know, if you want to succeed in the ecosystem, be cooperative, right? Be curious. Give the benefit of the doubt. Like, have a long form conversation if you've got a big question. These are all the attributes and the approaches that we should be uplifting and venerating and funding and demanding of one another. Because if we're going to get into this like flame war nonsense, like, just literally the value, it will push away all of the contributors who have something of enormous value to bring into the ecosystem. And I think, you know, my sadness around the Atom 2 process, to speak to that specifically, you know, I mean, that was a big, bold, transformative vision to completely revamp, you know, the Cosmos Hub. And I voted yes on it, right? And I voted yes, but I voted yes and I said, I'm voting yes, and I'm going to hold these people accountable who are bringing this to us to do better the next time, to include more voices and to increase this, because it's non-binding. We're just sort of saying we want to like move in a general direction. Other people voted no because they think it should have been better, and I respect that. But also there was just this like trolling, hyperbole, you know, undermining, threatening, undermining, brute politics that just that if we're honest with ourselves, it diminishes the value of the network, and so therefore we shouldn't put up with it, basically.
Man, I have so many questions. I don't know how much how good you are on the time, but from my perspective, like, we can go a little bit over time because there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
But staying on that topic, you said also earlier that you consider Atom to be this voluntary shelling point. But now with what we've talked about, the ICF kind of like restructuring or imploding, I don't even know what's the right word to use here. Some of the public good development kind of right now in the air. Nobody really knows, like, how is that going to continue? How do you view, also after the failure of Atom 2.0, how do you view the Cosmos Hub's role in the future?
Well, in terms of like the value, I'll give the bull case and I'll give the bear case, and I'll just be honest that at this moment in time you're catching me, and I'm pretty ambivalent, meaning I'm a little bit of both. So the bear case is that we have a toxic governance culture, and we've chased away all of the talented contributors, and the Cosmos hub just sort of like fades slowly into, you know, meaninglessness. It goes through it basically just tracks, because there's enough liquidity and there's enough community. It just kind of like tracks with the marketplace. We stay somewhere in, you know, between number 30 and number 20, and we just kind of track, and it's just kind of like, you know, and it has real utility. That real utility is liquidity primarily, and it's kind of a reserve currency system, and it's ad hoc, and we're super conservative, right? Okay, so that's the sort of like, that's the bear case, which isn't that bad. It's like, I don't think the Cosmos hub is gonna like poof and disappear in terms of its relevance or value. But in that scenario, the innovation has moved on to other places, you know, which is okay. Maybe that's a feature, not a bug. Like, look, I'm okay with, if we have a respectful conversation, I'm okay with the perspective that the Cosmos hub should be hyper conservative and that innovation should happen in other places. That's okay. Like, I'm cool with that if we're have a healthy debate and there's room for disagreement. Okay, so the bull case right now is that that as a community, even if it's so the bull case is, even if the hub decides to be super conservative, and I'll talk about we can go to a little branching pattern to talk about an innovative hub versus a non-innovative hub, which I want to be clear, I don't think that has much to do with the bull or bear case. The bull case is that we create a healthier like a healthier culture around the hub, right? That we learn from the mistakes of the past, and that whether it's a conservative Cosmos hub or an innovative Cosmos hub, the culture of on-chain governance and community-driven engagement is attractive and continues to pull people in who are sick of VC chains and sick of all of the nonsense, and that it's actually the way that we're dealing with hard problems. It's not that there are no hard problems. It's not that there's an infinite, you know, up and to the right, like, you know, thing. It's that, no, actually there's a genuinely community run blockchain and tech stack, and, you know, and at the heart of that, there is a respectful, professional, committed group of humans, or even amateur. It doesn't need to be professional. And we're really engaging with honest feedback, and, you know, it's like dynamic and fun, and it feels fun. And where people like me want to go participate in the next Cosmos vote, instead of people like me saying, fuck it, I don't want to deal with it. Right. And so there's like, I think I'm like a canary in the coal mine. You know, I would say, like, I have put a huge amount of effort, as not as a degen, but as a community member, to try to make Cosmos a thriving place, and to make our home as a business in that place. And Cosmos needs people like me. And so if people like me and those of us who are active contributors to core code and, you know, participate in adult conversations about the future of the space and other things, start to say, fuck it, I'm out of here because it's too toxic, then it erodes the value of the community. So I don't know how helpful that is, but
no, it's very helpful. Yeah, and I think we really need to get back to have fun, all of us. It might just be actually this market sentiment, because also, like, if you look at other ecosystems, like I said, I did some excursions over the past few weeks and months, and every ecosystem has their own struggles, has their own internal conflicts and all these kind of things. But yeah, I think more tangible, also maybe from a product positioning perspective, how do you view the Cosmos Hub not getting obsolete? And do you think that interchain security is a feature that puts the hub on the map, like, against the Polkadots, for example, out there?
I mean, I'm less I'm open to interchain security playing a role in the hub's future. I'm less convinced that we'll snap our fingers with interchain security and
everything will be fixed.
Well, because there's an honest argument. I think we have to accept there's an honest tension and argument between hub minimalists and hub innovation. And I think we need to have an honest, like, if we can hold that tension, which emerged, and there were moments and there were glimmers, which were so exciting, in which there was healthy debate, and there were real conversations about real trade-offs that were coming up. If we can hold that tension between hub minimalism and hub innovation, and have healthy public debates about that, no matter what the answer is that we come up with, I'm bullish. But if we play power politics and we do backroom and trolling and whatever to get what we want, instead of using a process to iterate and evolve a decision together, I think we're fucked. It's purely, I mean, I think I think the Cosmos Hub could be a top 10 chain, potentially, with or without interchain security. What I think the differentiator is going to be is to what degree do we have a healthy culture and advanced tools for engaging in the deliberative and democratic process of governance.
I think that's very fair thing to say. And I think when it comes to culture, like, definitely there needs to be kind of a sort of reset, maybe even to just flush out those bad vibes, because I think especially over the past months, not just Cosmos Hub, but also like other communities, there have been some bad vibes. But I want to get back to Regen Network. So just to summarize, you have you're kind of like in this ambivalent state. You are
I'm bummed out. I'm just bummed.
Yeah,
I'm bummed.
So it sounds like neutral, a little bit disappointed, also a little bit frustrated also. How does that affect the direction that you guys are taking? Because you said earlier that you guys are sunsetting the kind of like contributions and partnerships.
It looks that way, yeah. I think that's yeah. I think we'll we may still contribute from time to time, but we won't be performing the level of maintainership and engagement with the Cosmos SDK that we have up until now. So how does it affect Regen? Like, does that just mean basically that's actually more bullish for Regen, because now all of you guys, the whole team, the whole engineering team, you can just only focus on Regen, or what does it mean in terms of like internal? Yeah, we'll have a lot more focus and time and engagement for Regen core development and the creation of what we're building. So that's exciting. On a certain perspective, it's quite a relief to be able to just say, okay, great. Like, we've done our tour trying to, sort of like maintain this bigger community infrastructure and apparatus. And now it's time to just like get down and build Regen network and serve our app chain and our constituencies, and just like hammer on the features that are coming. And so, you know, and then, you know, just in terms of like where Regen is at, we've continued to postpone the nature carbon ton launch. I'm sure people are like, oh man, this is like, it's behind. The bulk of the reason that we're behind on the launch has to do with the fact that this is an asset that is getting bridged from Polygon, and the bridges that currently exist, like Axelar and Gravity and Wormhole, are all awesome, but they're not carbon asset bridges. Carbon isn't just like a random ERC20 token that all you have to do is track. Like, we have to move functionality. So there's message passing, and there's more complex, if there's a more complex bridge story, and that's taken us longer than expected, oftentimes because of the stuff, the EVM stuff on the Polygon side. We're actually all ready to go on Regen side. It's all ship shape. There's some audits that just took place, which is great. There's a last couple pieces that are coming together. So I think we're on track for a March NCT launch and March NCT liquidity pool on Osmosis with our partners, the Osmosis community. For those of you who don't remember, we did this first ever, you know, protocol to protocol swap and mutual carbon liquidity bootstrapping agreement with Osmosis. So there's going to be a very deep liquidity pool of real world asset of carbon credits that then can be used to sort of bootstrap this new regenerative finance economy. I haven't at all been speaking about it. It's like sort of a funny thing. Like, you know, I appear into other ecosystems as sort of like a refi founder and a refi guru, regenerative finance, not just decentralized finance. But in the Cosmos ecosystem, we've sort of like, you know, for various reasons, we haven't fully seen the refi wave as much as I thought we were going to. There's great people like the Empower Chain folks, and there's a bunch of cool stuff. I think that WindDAO on Juno has some of this vision to be funding public goods to the exchange. Of course, there's Regen, there's IXO. There's a lot there, right? But I actually feel like this big launch with the Nature Carbon Ton on Osmosis in collaboration, and the Carbon Zero, in which there's a bunch of, like, we've gone and done on-chain protocol governance with all of these different blockchains to generate demand for this real world asset to create this whole internal economy. And that's all, like, we're on the cusp of all of that launching. It's super exciting. So there's about to be deep carbon liquidity. You know, folks might go, like, you can go to Kepler and you can see Regen's marketplace live right now. We have these amazing carbon credits. Jack, I don't know if people saw on Twitter, but we just finally announced, this happened a little bit earlier, actually late last year, but Jack Johnson just offset his whole last year's music tour with our carbon credits, which is super exciting. So there's a bunch of cool, just like, there's so much activity and stuff moving right now. It's a very exciting time in Regen Network.
Can you explain to the audience how that process of tokenizing carbon credits work? And also in that context, there was a question related to that on Twitter regarding the typical fraud that happens in that industry. Like, how do you mitigate that? And yeah, just how that process works.
Yeah, fantastic. So I saw a bunch of great questions. I saw some great questions from Green Crypto. There was some good questions. Yeah, I forget who the username of the guy who's talking about fraud. Something like Crypto Hippie.
Crypto Hippie Bun, and then
Crypto Hippie Bun Secret Society. Yeah.
Secret Society.
Okay, so yeah, so let's start from the top. I mean, I don't think it's accurate, actually, or fair to say that there's 40% fraud in carbon markets. I think we should be more specific than that. I would say carbon markets tend to be very uncertain, right? Science around carbon is literally a tasteless, odorless gas, you know, when it's in the atmosphere. And when it's in a forest, it's, it's in trees and it's in soil. And so we have to find ways to monitor and quantify something. And that's complex, right? So I just kind of want to say, like, look, carbon markets in their existing legacy form, they have their problems. And sure, there's fraud like in any other market, but despite the hot takes, it's not just like completely crazily rife with fraud. There are real scientific differences of opinion around baselines and how you model and estimate things that lead people to make those sorts of claims. But there's also, like, market participants do understand that there are uncertainties related to this. Okay, so that's like my disclaimer. Now I'll get back into sort of like, simple mode. So the way that we approach things, which is really radically different, is to create fully transparent and auditable carbon credits using the blockchain, right? So you could think of Regen as an eco credit minting machine, right? And that means that we bring together stakeholders to choose the rules of credit minting. Okay, so it isn't like an automatic process. There's groups of scientists and land stewards using the blockchain to govern credit standards, which essentially say who needs to say what about where, using what data, what methodology, with what uncertainty to generate a credit. Does that make sense? So that's called a credit registry system, where you have the rules of credit minting that are outlined, and those are all governed by token holders and subgroups of token holders. So that creates this new public accountability around the entire process of governing the rules of minting. What that means is that we can innovate new carbon credits and bring them to market with this public blockchain approach, which is very exciting. So the initial credits that are going into the NCT pool are legacy carbon credits that were tokenized by our partners at Toucan that we have a bridge to bring over, because there's a fair amount of liquidity there. We did a whole report. People who want to dig deeper into the recent debates around Red Plus and voluntary carbon credits and the intricacies about that, where there's like, are these good credits? Are these bad credits? We just recently did a full report around, the specific credits that are in those baskets and our take on the scientific debate and other things. Okay, people can look at that. Do your own research. These are tokenized representations of existing what are considered to be existing high quality crediting standards. Where Regen Network is really magic is in our ability to create new Regen native credits. Those new Regen native credits are only going to be coming out towards the end of the first quarter. So we're going to have our first fully native on-chain carbon credits that the whole process has happened on Regen Network. And that stuff's going to be coming after the NCT launch, which is incredibly excited. The whole team is so amped to be telling that story, because it's so much clearer in a lot of ways, right? You have a stakeholder who wants to engage with bringing a new credit to the market, and they have to basically go through a rigorous peer review process to answer the question that people are asking. How do you prove that this is what it says it is? Does that make sense? So what Regen Network does is it creates a transparent, community-owned framework for people to go through a process to answer that question, so that purchasers can look at that, and it's all embedded into the credit metadata, and you can set a standard and you can say, these are the types of credits that I want to buy. So on Regen Network, one of the pieces of technology that we have is called the basket module, which allows a user to say, oh, I want to make these types of credits all like each other, so I can export them via IBC to osmosis or to evmos or to somewhere else. So, in a way, we serve both quality control, but also the process to allow users to encode what they think is quality. So that's sort of like the high level view of Regen Network.
What if I own a piece of land or a forest or whatever, and I want to become part of that? Like, is there a way to just sign up, or how do I get started?
Yeah, so you can go to you first off, you should probably review the crediting rules and credit class stuff. Sometimes there are credit classes you could just use, and sometimes there aren't. But you can go to library.regen.network, and there's the whole program guide about how to bring new credits into the marketplace is there. And you can also see there's information. You can sort of email us and we can get back and give you more information about how to engage as a land steward. For purchasers, if you want to offset, so the average American emits about 16.4 tons of carbon a year. For people who want to just like get engaged with offsetting, you can go to the marketplace right now. You can buy carbon credits and you simply retire them. And there's some nice guides. That's really exciting. And as I mentioned, we're doing protocol like offsetting with Stargaze and Osmosis and Regen Network. That's really exciting. I think there's a future of bundling carbon credits and NFTs. I think you're going to start to see people, addresses that have participated in offsetting, whether they're chain addresses or individual addresses. I think there's some people who want to start airdropping to those addresses and giving gifts and NFTs and art drops. So there's going to be this kind of like, I believe, this whole sort of virtuous, exciting sort of economy that's emerging around the public goods and the benefits that people are funding through their participation in the economy.
Conference offsetting, maybe that's the next big thing. Cool. How many projects are currently part of the Regen ecosystem? Do you know a number on top of your head, like
40 or so people developing credits and projects? There's 6 new credits coming into our marketplace from community members over Q1 and into Q2. Nice. So that's coming online. It's super exciting. I think we have something like 20,000 unique addresses of Regen Network, 75 validators, pretty high participation in governance. And there's about 30,000 tons of carbon in the marketplace at the moment. It's less than that because we've had about 5,000. There's about 20,000 tons of carbon in the marketplace right now. I think all in all, we're averaging around 8,000 tons of carbon sales a month. And as the Cosmos Zero campaign, concludes and the Osmosis launch happens, that's going to spike up to more like 70,000 tons with all of that, sort of on average, which is very exciting. We have about 12 million tons of carbon coming into and through the marketplace over the course of this year, which is very exciting. That's like our minimum. That'll be the minimum amount that comes up on chain and is exchanged. It may be much more than that. For dollar value of that, a ton of carbon goes somewhere between $3 and $50. Or even $100. It depends on the ton. Currently, the average price of carbon in our marketplace is $16. If you average the marketplace, the carbon that's all listed at the moment is all $40 a ton. It's all very premium carbon. And then the NCTs that are coming through that are going to form the bulk of the liquidity are much less expensive. They're like $2.50 or $3 a ton right now. So the average between those two types of carbon is something like $16 a ton. So if you multiply $16 a ton by 12 million tons, you get a sense of the amount of marketplace interaction. And again, these are real world assets, revenue generating assets, like people are exchanging, money, and a cut is going to each of the participants who participated in getting that credit into the marketplace, et cetera. So I think that's quite unique in terms of, the blockchain world. There's sort of like real exchange already happening on the Regen marketplace, which is very exciting. It's very exciting to me.
I think you also mentioned that at your customer's presentation that you could technically also back, for example, a stablecoin with NCT. Can you maybe talk about that and also some of the other wild use cases that NCT could have in the crypto space?
Sure. Well, so I'm, starting on the use cases. I think just zooming out, eco credits. NCT is a type of eco credit. Eco credits have this ability because they're commodity, meaning they get produced and then they get used, right? And as that gets automated and the flow through of production and use happens, you can create some really interesting financial instruments on top of that as the velocity of their use happens. So this is a very interesting moment of like, we have a digital commodity, like it's getting used. So in addition now to gas, where you're paying for block space and transaction fees with that, we have this other sort of like hybrid real world asset, digital asset, which is also a commodity. So I think it opens up some very interesting opportunities for DeFi applications, or what we would call regenerative finance applications. At the moment, we're just really focused on making sure that there's a supply of enormously high quality, industry accepted credits moving through and happening. But I think I've hinted at this in several presentations to the community, that there is this sort of opportunity for starting to collateralize stablecoins, for instance, with eco credits. And as we bootstrap the liquidity onto osmosis, as we have the flow through of eco credits, it starts to open up the opportunity for innovation along those realms, which is very exciting. I also think it's really exciting to think about bundling these carbon credits with NFTs, right? And creating new and novel instruments in that way that are either collectibles or, access tokens and other things. It's really exciting. I think some people are going to be using that in that way. And of course, they're just useful for offsetting carbon for businesses. And there's an increasing demand for that all around the world.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, is there going to be like a separate marketplace for like institutions and businesses, or is that just part of the general marketplace? Because I guess like they also have certain quotas to hit and how much they have to offset per year. So how is that going to work for institutions and businesses?
Great question. So yeah, we will have essentially a custodial version of Regen Marketplace that allows institutions to access the credits in the marketplace in a way that they're comfortable with, because currently most of them are not yet at a Web3 sort of capable of managing their public and private keys and engaging with the way that we've created this peer-to-peer marketplace structure. So we'll create sort of a Web 2 version of the marketplace that allows institutions to access these credits.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially after the FTX collapse, a lot of Web 2 players and institutions they're just done with crypto for a little bit at least. But yeah, very cool stuff. I don't know if you still have a few minutes, but maybe you can share a little bit about some of the exciting things. Like we had a lot of good conversations, real conversations also about some of the downsides and things that are currently moving you and also frustrating you. But what are some of the lights at the end of the tunnel? Like, where do you see Regen going, Cosmos? Yeah, maybe you can share any stuff that you're excited about.
Well, I mean, this upcoming NCT launch and opening up a, sort of like interchain carbon and making that real is exciting. It's been really lovely to work with the evmos community around NCT. There's going to be governance around that, but it's just been great. They see the potential, right? So it's really fun to see communities who see the potential of regenerative finance and are like, oh, wow, we can integrate this value stream and engage. I'm super excited about the potential of the synergy between Regen Network and Ethereum virtual machine blockchains. So we have this Polygon bridge opening up. There's so much activity over there. We are building this relationship with evmos. There's a huge, explosion of regenerative finance in the Ethereum community on the Ethereum virtual machine. But Regen continues to be the only native Web3 carbon registry in existence. So at the moment, we're like the only source, or one of the only sources. I think someone just opened up a two-way bridge with another carbon registry over in Polygon, but natively auditable, natively governed, natively minted. We're the only ones. And that may be true for the foreseeable future. So Regen has this really fun first mover advantage. And the Ethereum community is the one that actually has the most demand right now at this moment. Although with Cosmos Zero, once that's all concluded, we're actually going to blow away all of the previous sort of like usage numbers. So it's going to be interesting. So there's going to be this like cool interchain competition, I believe, for regenerative finance. And for those of you who aren't tracking this, I really think regenerative finance is going to be the next DeFi. Real world assets that represent real change and represent positive public goods are the opportunity for crypto to move itself out of its shadow and do things more efficiently than can be done in the incumbent banking industry. Like, this is the interesting thing. The blockchain industry has the ability to leapfrog and do climate finance and sustainability finance and regeneration finance better than it can possibly be done with the existing business and banking apparatus. More efficiently, more transparently, and more community governed. And the demand to do that is multi-trillion-dollar per year. So, the people who are paying attention to this and do lots of research, like the World Economic Forum, like the World Bank, there's been all of these these are institutions, right? These represent institutions looking forward and saying, what is the market size for these carbon and biodiversity and climate finance assets? And they're talking about, multiple $1 trillion per year of turnover. At the moment, it's, the carbon markets, ecosystem service markets, $500-600 billion a year right now. So we're looking at an industry that's about to double or 10x in size, and is basically only made possible when you have a distributed ledger to keep counterparties, honest and corruption proof, and to generate high quality auditable credits and then smart contracts, and to start to automate all of that process. So Cosmos being attractive to refi entrepreneurs, and Regen Network being this pillar that is sort of like the first generation and the biggest provider of this new asset class of carbon credits and biodiversity credits, still has me fired up. I'm still super excited and super bullish. And this next phase for the rest of the year is going to be huge for us as we refocus and we're just building Regen. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I like that term, sustainability finance, made on Cosmos. I think that sums it up. Also, I want to give a shout out to my co-founder at Cryptocito, to Serge. He's been heavily involved in the evmos proposal for the Cosmos Zero campaign. So that's really cool.
Thanks, Serge.
Love to see that. There's a lot of tribal, and labeling going on in the community, but I think that's just part of probably the bear market. Anyways, there's one question, and how's your Spanish, by the way? Do you understand that one?
Claro. A ver, entonces sí tenemos. A ver, depende, en esta pregunta estás averiguando cómo puedes vender carbono si no estás vendiendo la madera. O también hay oportunidad si estás manejando la madera de cierta forma, puedes también acceder al mercado del carbono. It's a difficult question to answer because I don't know where your forest is. It depends on the risk that forest might have. Dependiendo en el riesgo que tiene el bosque en frente de deforestación, es decir, si es en alto riesgo de deforestación, tal vez sería fácil acceder a un mercado de carbono para no cortar tus árboles. Si estás manejándolo para sacar madera, tal vez puedes mejorar el manejo y medir la cantidad de carbono que estás guardando en la madera.
Muy bien, me gusta. La próxima vez podemos hablar en español. No hay problema.
Claro.
Y si quieres más informaciones, en este enlace puedes encontrarlo, Jack. But yeah, man, we're gonna do this in Spanish one day. Like, I was really surprised. Okay, Peru. I was really surprised, like how many people in Cosmos actually speak Spanish. It's really cool. Like when we were in the Medellin, yeah, I'm very bullish on that region. So
I am too. I was sort of hoping we'd do another Cosmoverse in Latin America.
Don't worry.
But I understand it's got to get spread around. It's all good.
Yeah, no, but we got you. We got you.
We're just biased.
I'm rooting for it internally also. But yeah, we might be back sooner than one might think. But this was really cool. Thank you so much for all the insights, the real talk. If people have any follow-ups, I guess what's the best way? Just drop you a message on Twitter. Are your DMs open, or how should people contact you?
DMs aren't open, but I'll go check them. I'll do a round after this and just check if people have DM'd me. You can also respond in. I'll try to answer questions publicly. I noticed that a couple people from our team were trying to answer questions on Twitter. I'll also go through and try to answer. I realized there were some really great questions there, and we didn't get into all of the technical answers to all of that. Apologies. I always feel like I need to do better at the snippy hot takes. I get a little bit long-winded, but hopefully this has been useful for folks.
I think you're probably one of the best people to articulate your opinion. And I think even though you give a lot of information around it, and all our interviews, they're always well above an hour, but I think it's all value, right? You're not talking about irrelevant things. I think you have a very structured way to explain your thought processes and your experience. So I think that's very, very good. I don't know, is there any question from Twitter or from the chat that you have, that you noted, that you want to answer? Or
let me just have a quick look. I think so boy, there's so much stuff here that's good. Green Crypto had a bunch of great questions. To answer, he asked, nature-based offsetting always implies risks that CO2 might be released by change in management or wildfires. What's Regen's strategy to promote projects that are capturing carbon for long-term storage, e.g. wood from agroforestry for building materials or biochar? So we have a really fantastic biochar methodology that's coming. Stay tuned. It's going to go very fast. It might already be sold out, but that'll mean that it'll scale. So incorporating biochar into agroforestry, really important. And yes, I mean, going downstream to think about how woody materials are being used as they're off-taken from forestry or agroforestry systems is also very important. I'd also note that generally speaking, all carbon credits have a buffer pool. So if there's a risk related to fire, for instance, that risk is incorporated into creating a buffer pool. Now, we could get into all of the esoteric dimensions of how credit classes are created and how buffer pools are created, but I will just note that one of the really cool things that we're working on at Regen Network is the ability to have dynamic credits, so that you actually know like that credit represents the real-time information about what's taking place on the ground. And that's going to be transformational when we achieve that, by incorporating real-time satellite information and other information into the actual dynamic credit. It's going to be really a complete transformation of the way that the market works. And a lot of the questions on Twitter, you know, as that's accomplished, really it's a sea change what becomes possible. At the moment, the market still wants credits with buffer pools. And so we're sort of like incrementally improving and then bringing in this opportunity to actually generate new assets that are really completely different and see how those do out in the market, right? And that's this incremental approach where we build with existing demand while bringing on board transformational technologies, satellite, blockchain, artificial intelligence to transform the way that these markets work, we believe is really going to set us up to build a super solid foundation for the futures of these markets.
You know how they say, like in a bear market, you got to focus on the builders. And you know you're talking to a real builder if we have an interview for 1.5 hours and we don't even talk about a native coin of your blockchain. So because there's a question, actually, maybe we can wrap it up with that. Also on Twitter from Green Crypto. How will Regen create noticeable value revenue for token holders and stakers? Maybe you can explain a little bit the relation to the native Regen coin.
Yeah, so Regen is the proof of stake token that secures the application chain. You could think of the carbon credits that come into the marketplace as TVL. There are active discussions around upgrading the token economics to be used for fee splits. Regen is also a currency that can be used for buying and selling these eco credits. So the relationship is similar to the relationship between ETH and whatever smart contract, tokenized smart contract might be living on ETH. In our case, though, Regen is only used for launching new eco credits, and those eco credits have to go through the registry process and be anchored there. So the value is really related to providing the security and governance, peer-to-peer marketplace, and minting utility for the market to even exist.
Man, thank you so much for all the insights. This was really amazing, as always. Look forward to see you again sometime at one of the Atom events, latest at Cosmoverse. And yeah, looking forward to do this again anytime soon. Cheers,
awesome.
Man.
Thanks so much, Cryptocito, and thanks everybody out there listening. Great work bringing everybody together around the digital campfire. You're doing awesome.
Cheers.